When I tell people I make online courses, their number one question is always, ooh, what LMS should I choose? And I always give them the same answer. It depends. And I say it depends because that's a lot nicer than saying it doesn't matter. And it does matter, but it's not the most important question someone should choose. But I do understand that it can be rather overwhelming because there are so many LMSs out there, and most of them cost a lot of money. And so I don't want you spinning your wheels, worrying about what LMS, finding the perfect LMS. I'm going to teach you how to be a savvy consumer of your educational technology by giving you a list of the top 6 questions I like to ask when choosing an LMS. So, to begin with, let me start by explaining what an LMS is if you are newer to this space. It stands for Learning Management System, and it's basically a way to keep track of everything you might need in your online course or program. And so it can serve as a repository for all of your videos, PDFs, audio files, recommended resources, links, etc. It can also be a way to see what learners have interacted with. So, usually it keeps track of what learners have downloaded or viewed. You can see if they've completed a task, and that's really good for gauging engagement with your materials. It can also host activities in your online courses. And so, if you want to develop quizzes or surveys, a lot of times that will be built into the LMS features. Some LMSs even have templates for you to actually build your whole course. So, that is another way to go. I don't actually recommend that, but when you're in a pinch, certainly can work. And if you want students to complete something that you may give feedback on, having an LMS to keep track of everything is really handy. So it's one place they can turn things in. They can see, yep, I've submitted it. And then they should get alerted when you actually grade it or review it and give feedback. So it's much easier than trying to manually email things back and forth or tag somebody in Google Docs or something like that. So the other big thing it can provide is a way for your learners to interact with one another. So it could build a community space. And the nice thing is sometimes you don't want all of your materials just thrown out there at once. And so having an LMS can help you stay organized through modules. Sometimes it will release materials. Materials will open on a certain date. You can set that ahead of time, or you can base it off of what the students have completed prior. So maybe you want them to complete the first 2 modules before going on to module 3, for instance. And so that way it can really keep things more focused and keep the learner experience more curated rather than just having an open platform. So it is really nice for keeping track of all your students, all the materials, and all the activities. So I do recommend them, but they vary in terms of what you need. And a lot of times there are more bells and whistles in an LMS than you actually need. So let's take a step back and think about what's important. And I have worked several organizations between my time as a student and a faculty member at universities and being an instructional designer and working for various companies. I've calculated I have used at least 12 different LMSs, like extensively. And I haven't even come close to choosing them all. So I know it's a big world out there, and I don't want you stressing out over Thinkific versus Kajabi versus Podia. Let's not worry about that. Let's focus on what do you want your LMS to do? And so I've come up with the 6 questions. Question number 1, do you need an LMS? I'm not saying this jokingly because sometimes when you are doing simple things or you are newer in your business, you may not need an LMS. It may be more convenient for you to use a Facebook group or just use communication tools. Like I've experienced really successful coaching programs that use Marco Polo or Slack or Telegram or even just WhatsApp or Google Docs. And so if the thought of choosing an LMS is really overwhelming you right now, take a step back. You may not even need one. And I have a client who just decided to get rid of her Kajabi subscription and put everything on Patreon because she wasn't using Kajabi for really what it was meant for. And everything she needed was right there in a cheaper format through Patreon. It doesn't mean you can't grow and evolve later, but sometimes it's nice to just take the pressure off and say, maybe I don't even need an LMS. And that's okay because I, again, have been in lots of successful coaching programs that didn't have what I would call an official LMS. And if budget is a concern because you're new, there are some free options. A really popular one, you probably use the Google Suite already. And so Google has a free LMS. It's called Google Classroom. So that's a super low budget way that you could keep things a little more organized and make it feel more like a packaged course rather than random materials. So I'm always happy to talk through this question with anyone who is stressing about it. So let me know. But ultimately, if you don't need to manage large groups of learners, or if you don't need to track learners' progress, and certainly if you're not managing for like compliance, completions, or certifications, you may not need an LMS. It does take a little time and money often to set it up. And so I don't think you need one if you're just starting out in your coaching business, but it's a conversation to have. And a lot of times these LMS companies will promote a lot of flashy tools, and you just may not know yet what you need. And so take a pause, get the lay of the land first before jumping in with a big ticket purchase. That brings me to question number 2. How much does it cost? And you may think, yes, this is an obvious question, but pricing does vary quite a bit. And some LMSs will base it off of the number of courses that you want to include in that LMS. Some base it off of the number of users. And a lot of them, what's nice is they may have more premium features. So they likely have tiers. And so if you need to use more features or add more courses, that price may go up. They may hook you by, yep, it's free. And then you start using it a little more and suddenly it's a big expense. So look at the different tiers and think about scalability, thinking ahead in terms of what you want to do, because it can be a lot of work to set up your LMS up front. But then the nice thing is it should last you. I don't recommend changing platforms every year, but it's certainly something you could do as your needs grow and evolve. So I'd say most platforms, like I said, have a tiered system. So you could start off with a cheaper version until your needs grow. I have seen basic plans start at $25 a month, around there, all the way up to like $200 a month. So they do vary. The platform I use, it's actually called Learn Worlds. And I'll tell you why in a second, why I use that specifically. It's around $99 a month, but I admit I signed up for it during a sale period, I think around Black Friday sales around Thanksgiving time in November. And I actually got a discount for paying for a year in advance. So there are ways to kind of bring the price down if you do want some more premium features. Because honestly, I'm only paying around $69 a month for mine. Again, you may not even need that. The third question I would pose is, does the LMS integrate with my other platforms? And so most LMSs worth their salt will integrate with all the major website builders. And so you can link students to your LMS from your website. But it's nice to make sure that the software integrates not only with your website, but potentially with your payment gateway or your CRM, or if you're using any webinar tools, Zoom, for instance, and things like that. And some platforms do cost more upfront because they do include a CRM. So that's important to look at when you're considering price, because it's not always apples to apples. So for instance, Kajabi is on the more costly end, but it's very popular LMS, but it does have a more comprehensive platform than some because it has a built-in CRM and email marketing system. So think about the cost you're using for various systems. And if you know you're never going to change from your current CRM or email marketing, then you may not need that capability in your LMS. So a bunch of things to consider when you're combining multiple technologies. And don't forget responsive mobile design. So that's another feature that I think is really important to consider because that means the app is basically built to automatically adjust if you're viewing the content on a mobile device versus a desktop. So if you've got a cell phone or an iPad, that screen ratio is going to look different. And sometimes if it's not responsive, what we call mobile responsive, then it'll look funny, the pictures look weird, or the layout just doesn't appear right. And it can be really frustrating. It kind of makes you look unprofessional. So most LMSs, it's pretty much the standard in 2026 that they have an app and that they have mobile and desktop responsiveness, that they can do both. But for some of the older or cheaper LMSs, it's not always built in. So that is kind of an important consideration. What are you getting for the cost? Sometimes, like, you don't want to go too cheap, but it really, again, depends. These are all little things to look for. I also think it's important when you have the mobile responsiveness that some LMSs will allow you to download materials to review them offline. And so if you travel a lot and you want to read or watch things on the go, then that's handy. And if you're like me, my family goes camping a lot in the summer, and I like to have that, capability to download things when I'm off grid, that I can still be learning and not have to feel like I have to wait till I'm back home. So, question number 4. What am I hoping to do with my LMS? And this is a bigger topic, but it encompasses, are you just using your LMS to build courses? Some have a course builder built in, not all do. I don't think you need it. There are plenty of things I can teach you. What are the key ingredients you need in a course? Because I don't like it when it feels all cookie cutter, but sometimes it is nice for having somebody to hold your hand. It's just kind of plug and play. The other thing that I mentioned why I use LearnWorld is because it's SCORM compatible, and that's a specific software I use to create interactive e-learning courses. And so that is not common in most LMSs that we use in the coaching industry. So that's something to look for. It is a lot more common for LMSs used in corporate environments. So just be aware of that. It allows for a lot of interactivity, but there's also like automated grading features that are sometimes built into an LMS. Or how about quizzes or surveys? Do you want to deliver those? Again, you don't need to. And there's some workarounds, like maybe you can build your survey in Google Forms, for instance, and then add the link. But the more places you have to check, or the more places it feels like you're sending students, the more complicated the user experience can feel. So I say simpler is usually better. But again, I am very cost conscious. So don't get a platform just because you want to give surveys. There's other ways to do that specifically. Gamification is another big topic that a lot of LMSs will have built in. The idea of, ooh, I get points if I complete this, or kind of the idea is like it kind of keeps you coming back, or they may have leaderboards for how much you engage or interact with the content, or the scores you get on certain activities. So some people are motivated. It's a nice extrinsic form of motivation. So that may be something you want. And same with social learning tools. Is there a community feature? Can you ask questions easily? Can you interact with others through the platform? Again, it's not a deal breaker. There's other ways to work around it, but the fewer pieces of technology we have to ask students to learn, the better. Another helpful tip for you is if you want to message students about activities, assignments, materials, is there a way to do that through the platform? That's part of its functionality. The messaging feature is handy. And do you want to keep track of what students have done? Do you want to be able to give them feedback in the LMS, or are you going to just message and email them separately on another app? Those are all possibilities. But again, an LMS is meant to make things more seamless for the user and for the instructor. So it can be useful. Another thing is completing certificates or issuing badges to your students. So the more that they complete, or if they've passed a certain set of materials, maybe there's quizzes built in. And a lot of times your LMS will automatically, you can set it up to issue those certificates when the requirements have been met. Again, saving you the manual process of doing it yourself. And so that can be really nice. And it could allow for e-commerce in your course. There could be multiple things you're selling or other links or resources you want to provide them free or at cost. And so a good LMS will have all those options available for you. And again, it may just to the learner feel like they're just entering your website or they're just logging on to your homepage, for instance, or your course portal. And so we want to make it feel seamless and easy. There's a lot of things that an LMS can do, and there's a lot of times the ed tech companies will promote so many items. And a lot of times it's important to think before you go looking, what is it that I actually want to use this LMS for? And most of us envision what we've seen. And so if you haven't had an instructor or a coach or a teacher use an LMS very much, if it's just a place where they house videos, you may not even know what's possible. And so that's worth a helpful call with someone like me to talk about, okay, what is it that you're trying to accomplish for your students? So what's going to get in the way? And then what is going to really enhance the experience? Because interactivity does make content more engaging rather than just watching videos, but there's other ways to get engagement rather than through the LMS. It is just a tool. It is not the teacher. So it doesn't replace what you know and feel and how you engage with your learner. So you still need to be an active part of that, but the features do vary, a reasonable amount. Question number 5. What's the user experience? I think finding an LMS that fits your needs as a course creator are extremely important, but you also have to think about your learner. That's equally as important. And so check for user feedback. Try to test drive the LMS as a student if you can. Is it easy to navigate? Is it intuitive? Is the layout visually appealing? That can vary. Are there ample guides to educate the learner on how to use the LMS and troubleshoot when needed? I teach a class at the University of Colorado, Denver called Designing Online Learning Experiences. And for many in that course, it's the first time that they've ever seen the LMS from a teacher point of view because I'm having them build something in an LMS. They may be very adept at using an LMS as a student, but the view, the functionality can be quite different for many LMSs if you're on the admin side, setting things up as the instructor versus just taking things as a student. So I encourage you to look at it like a student. If you're seriously considering purchasing an LMS, there should be either some sort of free trial or an example course that you can test as a learner and a creator. So don't hesitate to ask. And then certainly ask other coaches about their experiences on both sides. What's the feedback from their learners? Word of mouth is huge. All the big companies make their LMS sound amazing, but real people, as you know, are more likely to give you the honest, less edited version. So get those honest opinions and think about how you enjoy it if you're taking a course as a student. So try to get a sneak peek of what the LMS is like as a user, not just as a teacher. And then question number 6. What type of support services are provided? Technology is often only as good as its service desk. So if the support is lacking, you may get so frustrated you want to find a different platform. And so the more you can learn that up front, the better. When I worked for the Colorado School of Public Health, I managed an LMS for a center within that department. And I remember specifically choosing the LMS I did because the support documentation was so extensive. So even without purchasing anything, I could see, wow, there were a lot of helpful videos and tutorials and PDFs that showed me screenshots and I knew exactly what to click. It was easy to follow, easy to read. And I found out that they had really awesome feedback, like almost immediate. So they had a really awesome help desk where you could chat with people live. The response times were quick and they didn't make you feel dumb for the questions you were asking. That is kind of always key in my mind. No LMS works perfectly all the time. So you really need to be able to ask questions when things don't go according to plan, because sometimes you know what you want to do and you just don't know where that button is, or there's weird glitches because LMSs are quite complex systems. So they're more complex than just an email. So it's not uncommon for something small but really important to just glitch out and not work the way you want. And sometimes there's nothing you could do about it, and you have to rely on your support team. And that's what you're paying for. So, some companies are much better about this than others. So I check reviews for that support. Don't ask the sales team and don't base it off of the sales team. The sales teams are almost always the most responsive. It doesn't mean the support team is. Once they've hooked you, once they've got you as a paying client, do they act like they want to keep you as a happy paying client? So that's really important. Is there a live support? Is there email? What do they say their response times are? Is it, we'll respond to you in 5 to 7 business days? Or is it, no, you'll get a response and ideally a resolution within 24 to 48 hours? So that can be very different. So I would check reviews. I would ask around, ask colleagues, ask others you know. It doesn't hurt to ask the company and see what they say. Are they confident? Not just, yeah, we've got great support. Like, no, give me specifics. How good is your support? What is the response time? And what are the mechanisms for me to reach out and ask questions? Am I limited on how many questions I can ask? Is there an onboarding support specialist to help me set up a program for the first time? Sometimes when you sign on to a new company, you will have a window of time where you get extra support while you are getting things set up. So that's always nice to have as well. So those are really my top 6 questions in terms of what to ask. 1, do you need an LMS? 2, how much does it cost? 3, does it integrate with my other platforms? 4, think about what am I hoping to do with the LMS? What features do you need? It gets exciting when you hear all the bells and whistles, so try to take a step back realistically, like, what do I actually need? What's core? The rest maybe are nice to have, but don't let it sidetrack you. So that was number 4. Number 5, what is the user experience? And number 6, what type of support services are offered? So by now, hopefully you've got a strong sense for what an LMS can do, and you won't be swayed by all the marketing out there trying to convince you to buy the latest and greatest LMS. At the end of the day, most LMSs pretty much do the same thing, but the details differ. So I encourage thoughtful consideration. You do deserve an LMS that feels right to you, and now you have the tools to judge for yourself as a savvy consumer. And if you still have lingering questions, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask. You can find me on Instagram at The Learning Alchemist. Until next time, make it a great day. Thanks for tuning in to the Learning Alchemy Lab. If you enjoyed this episode, hit subscribe and connect with me on Instagram at The Learning Alchemist. Until next time, keep teaching with intention and creating learning that truly transforms.